All right, guys, here I'm sitting here virtually, East Coast versus West Coast here with Keren Sachs at Shutterstock. She's the head of image acquisition for both Shutterstock and Offset. And sitting beside her there is Mr. Scott Braut. He's the vice president of content over at Shutterstock. So they've both agreed to come on This Week in Photo to talk about, of course, Shutterstock and microstock and stock photography. But also, I want to get into the weeds about some ways that photographers that are looking at getting into the stock photography industry, how can they differentiate themselves from the other photographers that are out there? And what kind of images should you be uploading and what shouldn't you be uploading and all that stuff. So guys, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Let's start with backgrounds on both you guys. Scott, let's start with you. So you're sort of running things content-wise over at Shutterstock. How did you get to that perch there at one of the biggest stock photography companies on the planet?
Sure. Well, I've been in photography for about 20 years. Went to school for photography. When I graduated, I ultimately went to work for the Associated Press as a photo editor. That was 1994. It was a time that the Associated Press was making a transition from film to digital, so it was still, the kind of time period where they had wet darkroom days. It was a great time to be there because it was the first time they began to have professional digital cameras like the Kodak NC2000, and the first time that they had digital distribution of news images. So I've been at the Associated Press for about 5 years. I've worked in a number of roles in photography, but eventually went to work for the ABC News Digital in a technical product capacity as a product manager. And by virtue of that experience at ABC, because of my broadcast experience, because of photography experience, and also because of the technology experience, came to work for Shutterstock, with the purpose of relaunching their video business. So I've been here about 4 years, and by virtue, again, of those different experiences, eventually kind of came to oversee the content team, having had relationships with photographers, with videographers, and also sort of understanding the technical piece of it.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, I want to dive into the video piece of it a little bit as we dive into the interview. But Keren, what about you? What was your sort of path into the world of Shutterstock?
Sure. I started my career, actually, I studied photography at the University of Michigan, and I had always dreamt of working at National Geographic, as many young photographers do. And I was able to land my first job out of school at National Geographic working for the kids magazine as a photo editor. I was there for 4 years. I met many of the most amazing photographers working there, forged a lot of great relationships. And what I learned through that experience was that I loved working with photographers. At first, I thought I wanted to be the one out there shooting, but I really enjoyed those relationships and editing. And from National Geographic, I moved up to New York City. I ended up working at Martha Stewart Living. I was the director of photography for the merchandise side of the business, so I oversaw photo production for 18 lines of products, which was a fantastic experience. And I, from there, went out to San Francisco for a little bit and worked for Pottery Barn, working with some of the same photographers that I had worked with at Martha Stewart, so that was a great experience. And I had worked on both the editorial and the commercial side of the business. So coming to Shutterstock was a great experience for me because I was able to bring all of those past experiences, those past relationships together in one place, but in a new way where it wasn't just about commercial or editorial, it was combining everything through technology, which has been fantastic.
That's cool. So between the two of you guys, it's like you got the 1-2 punch in the photography world, and that combines to make Shutterstock. So then Shutterstock itself, let's just talk about the history of the company. And I don't know if you consider the stock photography landscape of businesses, is it a crowded space now, or is it sort of shaken out into just the main juggernauts are left standing?
I think there's certainly never been more sources of stock photography than there are today.
Yeah,
that's for sure. But we consider ourselves to be one of the go-to sources for any creative stock asset. So it doesn't matter if it's video or photography. Yeah.
Yeah. So with that, let's switch to just the history of Shutterstock and what the genesis was of the company. I know there's always that sort of, okay, there's the founder of the company saw a need, built something cool and then suddenly people flocked to it. Was it that kind of Silicon Valley sort of New York high-tech story, or was it something more methodical?
Sure. The company was founded in 2003 by our current founder and CEO, which is John Aringer. John comes from the background of being an entrepreneur and a photographer, and John had started a number of online businesses for which he needed stock photography, but in the process of going to license stock photos, found the process, very expensive, very cumbersome, filled with a lot of friction. So what John ended up doing was going out and buying a Canon Rebel XT, shooting about 100,000 of his own images, and from that curating a collection of about 30,000 with which he founded Shutterstock. So after that, he ended up extending the model to a number of contributors, and that's basically how Shutterstock was born.
Wow. And then the rest is history. How's it going now? Is it you guys are still here? I mean, so companies that are, companies that aren't successful aren't around. You guys have been around, like you said, since 2003, so you're doing something right. What's it like right now? Are you guys still pressing forward, or are you on your heels? What's it like inside?
Yeah, no, it's great. It's absolutely an exciting time for us to be here. Now having gone from John being the one contributor, we now have over 40,000 contributors. We've got 750,000 customers around the world, 30 million images, over 30 million images in the collection, and even with contributor payouts, we've delivered about $150 million to contributors in royalties. So it's a very healthy business, healthy on both sides of the business, both the customers and the contributor side, and we're very excited about our time here right now.
Yeah. Now, Keren, looking at the image acquisition side of things, what does it look like? What's an average, as we transition this into a discussion about being successful in microstock, what is it the average photographer that's doing really well in business-wise and making money in microstock, what does it look like for them? How many images are they uploading? What's their average, without giving away too much? How much can they make in, say, a month? What does that look like for people that are like, I want to try this, but I'm not sure what the numbers look like?
Sure. Well, I can tell you the photographers who take it seriously, who really go out there and shoot with the end client in mind. That's what we always like to say. Photographers who aren't just taking pictures of anything they see, but they're thinking how those images can be used in the future. Those are the photographers who we find are the most successful on Shutterstock. And those photographers are uploading weekly, and if not weekly, on a monthly basis. They're constantly uploading to their portfolio on the site. So some photographers or illustrators might only have a few hundred images, but they're the best that they are able to create. They're the best of their kind. And so from those images, they're able to generate significant revenue. Other photographers might have portfolios of 5, 10, 15,000 images, and they've been with us for a while and are constantly adding new work.
Yeah. And then with that, if those photographers that are constantly adding new work, how are they doing that? Do they self-assign themselves, or is there a list of, the Shutterstock needs images in this category, and you let the masses know so that you fill that category? Or is it like, say I'm a photographer and I say, you know what, hey, I'm going to Seoul, I'm going to shoot a bunch of things and put them up on Shutterstock and hopefully someone will bite. Is it random like that, or is it more methodical in terms of the content that gets put in the library?
You get a little bit of both, but the photographers who take it seriously, the ones I was referring to earlier, really study their own sales, and they're constantly on the site, and they're looking at which images are showing up when they hit most popular for the search results. So if you were to type in anything, whether it's food or lifestyle, there's a few different ways that you can search images on our site, and if they're looking at the most popular images, they can get a good idea of which images clients are really looking for, and then they start to use that for inspiration as they create new images. So they're not necessarily copying what they're seeing, but they're letting those images help inform the direction that they go.
Yeah. Now, looking at the microstock industry overall, a lot of the photographers that have been shooting for 20, 30 years or plus, they've seen the transition in the industry from, okay, I put an image up there and I get paid hundreds, thousands of dollars or whatever to license it, and now similar images are much less, let's say, right? So there was a couple of years ago, I'm sure you were sitting in the middle of it, there was all this sort of backlash from photographers over microstock is killing photography and stock photography. And what's your position on that? Was it is this just a logical evolution of where things need to go, e.g. the long tail, or was that just a time that is over now, and now that we're all digital, everything, all bets are off? What's your position?
So this is a big topic, but I think one that we love. Having come from the background, as I mentioned earlier, of having worked at AP and a wire service at a time where the world was firmly entrenched in rights managed photography and long friction-filled sort of licensing models. If you look at what's happened to image consumption in the last 10 years, there's been enormous change. So in that period after the Associated Press, I worked as a photo editor that worked on book projects and magazine projects, through the wire service, with newspapers. And that was an environment where images were getting published, once per day or once per week. Fast forward to today, and you've got 700 million websites, consuming content 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There's something like 2.4 billion internet users consuming content in that time. So, who the audience is, where the audience is, how they consume images, how they communicate with each other visually. We've really seen massive changes to that. But what hadn't really been changing was the way that images were licensed, or the way people went out and were able to acquire images, and communicate. So. The great thing about and what we believe in with our model is this idea that it's created this pool of licensable images that now are available and accessible to hundreds of thousands of customers across the world in every single geography. Simultaneously at the same time, and I promised that this would be a big topic. You've got contributors around the world who are looking to monetize their assets, and so now Shutterstock has become this platform by which you can connect those people, the contributors on the one side who are looking to kind of license their imagery, and the many hundreds of thousands, of customers that are looking to communicate.
The connector. You guys are the connector, yeah. And looking through the library, I use Shutterstock all the time for the images that we use on This Week in Photo, and that's one of the most fun parts of my job, is to go in and find the right image for the post. So I'm one of those millions of people that are digging into the library all the time. So with that, when I'm in the library, I see all kinds of stuff in there. I mean, this conversation so far has been centered on photography, but as you sort of foreshadowed before, there's video in there, there's Illustrator templates in there, there's all kinds of stuff in the library. It's not just photos anymore. How are you seeing the adoption of that stuff? Are people actually coming to Shutterstock well, obviously they are, but I mean, what kind of numbers of people are you seeing coming in there like, okay, I need a template for a PowerPoint presentation, I'm going to download that. What does that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. If you look at video in and of itself, video is one of the fastest growing parts of our business. We definitely know from customers, we have customers in the office all the time, and we talk to them about their workflows and their needs. And, they tell us every day that they've gone from a time where, they used to the point earlier, publish to a single publication. Now they're doing the ebook and the website, and now they need a video, and they're being called on to have these skills that they never even had. So I think the collection has grown, to kind of match those needs. It's amazing now we have this event called Pixels of Fury that we invite art directors and designers to come to an event and basically compete. So have a battle type environment where they put together some new creation using the assets of Shutterstock. And it's amazing to see the way that they come into the collection, and to your point about having a lot of different kinds of assets, they can pull together a lot of different kinds of stuff to create something new and original. And it wasn't possible to do that 5 or 10 years ago in the way that stock had been structured at the time or offered to customers.
Yeah, and then of course the crazy rapid adoption of tablets and devices and that sort of thing, and apps, of course. I mean, all these millions of apps that are being generated on all these different platforms, they all need assets, right? Are you seeing a lot of people dipping into the library to grab things to build apps and those kinds of projects with?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we see consumption for all different kinds of uses. I mean, it can range from somebody who has a small business in India that is looking to either promote their business or get inspiration to the kinds of app designers and other kind of digital designers that are looking for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's crazy. All right, let's talk about it. So it all started with Shutterstock, right? And then now you guys are diversifying into several, or at least a couple of different sub brands, right? So there's Skillfeed that's out there. I'm going to talk about that just briefly, and then also Offset, which is another way that people can acquire images. So tell me about Skillfeed and what that business is and who it's for.
Sure. Skillfeed is an online learning platform. So anyone, whether they're illustrators or videographers or photographers, can come to the site and find tutorials that they can learn how to be even better in their craft and further their skill set. And it also is interesting because those same people can then upload tutorials and teach their peers. What we've learned through our community is so many of our photographers and illustrators want to share with their friends that they're making through this industry how to be better. We have very active forums on the Shutterstock website where people share these little trades, little
like skills and
skills. Yeah, excuse me.
It's a feat of skills.
Where, yeah, exactly. Where the photographers are sharing tips to be better at their craft. So that's a really exciting thing for us to watch. And now they're able to do that on Skillfeed.
That's great. And then Offset. So Offset, what I really want to understand is what the genesis of Offset was and how you're positioning that next to Shutterstock itself. How does that work? So first of all, describe what Offset is.
Sure. Scott and I will both want to talk about this because it's definitely a passion project for the two of us.
Sure.
And for many people here at the company. Shutterstock, as you know, has over 30 million images. Offset, we have about 50,000 images, and they're storytelling images. We're working with photographers from around the world. Many of these photographers have not licensed imagery before. Some of them have. And we're going through their archives and pulling images that we see that have a very narrative quality and tell a story in a different way. And we're seeing these images being used as hero images. So advertising agencies, publishers are using these images as full-page spreads, as covers, in a way that's really exciting for us to branch out into the industry.
Got it. And then Scott, did you want to add something to that?
No, just the one thing that I was going to add is just as a business, Shutterstock currently services the 750,000 customers. The different kinds of customers that we can get through that, there's everybody from like the freelance graphic designer to media companies, publishers, and advertising agencies. And at the end of the day, a lot of those users have very different kinds of needs. So Offset is basically positioned in part as a solution for some of those ad agencies and media companies and large publishers that are looking for a different kind of image.
Right.
To Keren's point, that hero image.
Yeah. Now, are the licensing restrictions different on Offset images versus Shutterstock? And what's the price differential?
Sure. Offset is a royalty-free business model, similar to Shutterstock, so it stays in the ethos of our company of how we see the photography industry and the illustration industry. The prices, the advertised prices on Offset are $250 for a low-res file and $500 for a high-res file, where Shutterstock has a subscription model and different images depending on the license that a client needs. Offset has two set price points.
Okay, and the low-res would be for bloggers and online multimedia usage, and the higher price one would be for printing.
Right, the low res is about 3 megabytes, so
Yeah.
online use.
Plenty. Yeah,
Right.
That's great. How long has Offset been in operation?
We launched in March. We had a soft launch when we were still in beta, and we came out of beta in the fall, and now we're out there, and anybody can come to the site and experience the collection, which is growing every day.
That's awesome. What's the URL for Offset?
Offset.com, www.offset.com. Can't get easier than that, right?
Easy. Perfect.
And you can also get to the Offset site through Shutterstock. So if you're searching for images on Shutterstock, there's a button that you can click to come over to Offset as well.
Yeah, and to the folks that are watching / listening to this, I know one of our TWiP hosts is one of the Offset contributors, and Martin Bailey, correct? He's in
Yes, yes. Martin is so wonderful. We're thrilled to have his archive on Offset. It's such a pleasure to work with him. He is fantastic.
Yeah, that's a huge endorsement because I know how picky Martin is. So.
We've had so much fun talking with Martin and seeing the different images he shoots as he travels the world. It's exciting. I feel like I'm traveling with him as he sends these images, only I'm here in an office while he's out there.
Right. Yeah, he's out there with the snow monkeys and you're there in meetings.
Lots of snow monkeys.
So I want to be respectful of you guys' time, and you guys, speaking of meetings, probably have other ones to jump into, but let's talk a little bit about some tips and actionable tips that you can give to photographers that are looking at jumping into this business and submitting images. I know I've heard one of the running jokes is no more cats, no more pictures of kittens. That's it, no more cats. The world has enough cats in stock photography. So what are some ideas for content to shoot that would do well, and then how to shoot that? Like, should they, even gear-wise, should they be photographers only be shooting with full-frame DSLRs or smaller format cameras okay? How does it all work?
So maybe I can share a few tips about the content and then pass it over to Scott because he's much more knowledgeable about the gear than I am.
Perfect. See, I told you, 1-2 punch,
exactly.
right?
It's the team here, right? So as far as the content, I always say to photographers, look at the world around you. What types of images are you seeing in magazines? What are you seeing in advertisements? That's what you should be shooting. And that's a great way to stay on top of different trends. Always look at images. Every time I get a magazine, I'm flipping it around and looking at the credit to see where the image comes from. I'm looking at the styling, looking at the hair, the makeup, the fashion. All of that is really important when you're creating images for stock because they're not just for your consumption, they're for the consumption of the clients, and you want the clients to recognize the quality in those images and download them. So that's an incredibly important feature in creating stock photography. Something else that's really helpful to start out is think about what you know and what you're good at. So if you love to cook, or you have a friend who loves to cook and you love food and eating food, start shooting food photography. And I always suggest pulling some inspiration together, maybe on Pinterest or other sites out there, of a shoot that you want to do, and then sit down and write out a shot list. And some of the advanced photographers might not need shot lists, but I think they're really helpful to get your thoughts down on paper so that when you start shooting, when you pick up your camera, when you have your lights ready, you really can get every shot that's available to you and shoot every sequence. Because then you can walk away at the end of the day with maybe 40 or 50 great images to upload to the site. So there are certain topics that we're always looking for: lifestyle images, model released lifestyle images. With the World Cup coming up, soccer or football is really a great topic to cover. Kids playing, just having fun, teams playing, and always get model releases.
Yeah, and one question, Scott, before I move on to you, one question about that is, I've heard that the topical shots and the shots that are more, if the 4th of July is coming up, so lots of red, white, and blue type shots, or if it's holiday season and lots of snow and Christmas tree, that kind of thing. But what I want to have you guys demystify is, over the years, it seems like you have a lot of those kinds of images that show up that are evergreen that people can go back to. Is there a way that photographers can keep it fresh so that because when I look in there, I'm like, wow, there's so much stuff in here. How can I possibly differentiate myself to put something in there that hasn't been done better? What are some tips around how to make it better or different?
One very important thing to us right now is the fact that we are a global business.
Yeah.
So every artist that is creating content has a choice to make, and they can create content that is relevant to a global audience. And all of those people, or they can try and create content that's relevant to a local audience. And so, we're really interested in getting more local content from many of our artists around the world. So a business meeting in London is going to look very different than a business meeting in Rio de Janeiro. That's going to look very different than a business meeting in Shanghai. And so we're always encouraging contributors to look for holes in the collection. We provide certain tools that help them do that. We provide a keyword trends tool that shows them when the demand of a particular topic is starting to rise relative to a specific keyword. So the most successful stock photos take advantage of some of those opportunities. They also do something else, which is they often kind of represent multiple concepts. So even though a stock photo of a surfer might be one of the more common stock photos that you see, or a business handshake, or whatever the case may be, it's usually, those images are often successful because they represent more than one thing. So for a surfer, it could be, risk and excitement, but then also the literal concept of a surfer. So the best stock photos tend to capitalize on all those things.
I love it. I love it. Perfect. So, Scott, what about gear? So, shooting this stuff, do photographers need to go out and invest in the latest full-frame Nikon or Canon or Sony or whatever, or can they use a smaller footprint camera?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Today they can use a smaller footprint camera. I mean, we've gotten to the time where what's the latest megapixel count on a smartphone is, I think, 41 megapixels. So I think it's more about not the equipment, but the execution and the idea that content is king. A sensor is a sensor and a lens is a lens, and you need to have a certain level of basic technical proficiency to make sure that an image is in focus and properly color corrected and all those things that serve the needs of a buyer. But at the end of the day, those are kind of learnable skills, and certainly it's not about the price point of the camera. I mean, speaking to that earlier experience at the Associated Press, where the digital cameras were $26,000 for the first DSLRs, and we're no longer in that environment. You can get at a very accessible price point. Even if you look at video cameras like GoPros at a few $100s, you're dealing with very capable equipment today.
Very, very high quality. What about megapixel restrictions? Is there must be at least this many megapixels before it can be accepted into the library restriction?
Yeah, so our standard, which is a historical standard, is 4 megapixels, okay, which now even some of the most basic of smartphones can shoot a 4 megapixel image.
Yeah, that was my next question. I was going to say, can iPhone shooters, there's a bunch of Instagram people out there, can they transfer their skills over to Shutterstock and start putting images into the library?
They can. For us, we focus on the basic technical requirements of the content and the quality of the content. But if the content concepts are there, they can absolutely get them submit them and get them approved.
That's really cool. So what's next for you guys? What's next for Shutterstock, Offset, Skillfeed? You guys are on a path for world domination. What's the next continent that you need to acquire?
I mean, we've talked about some of them. I think Skillfeed is an online learning platform. When we think about Shutterstock's portfolio of products, it's also a portfolio of opportunities. So, we get very excited about hearing about people around the world that have maybe had a day job or been a professional artist, and they came to our platform and they were able to make money from their work. And sometimes that really liberated them in a way that they either got rid of the day job and went full-time into photography and videography. So for us, some of those new frontiers are things like Skillfeed, where now people can think about their ability to become an online instructor and what skills they have that they can make available to a worldwide audience, and how to monetize that. Footage and video is a tremendous area where everybody is learning about the importance of video in advertising, down to the smallest business. And so those people are looking for more stock video. We've got over 1 million stock videos relative to the many millions of potential customers out there, and the tens of millions of potential uses. That's actually a small collection. It's really that's why we get excited, because from our perspective, it's the beginning of a new day. This is we're very kind of early in the in sort of like the level of opportunity that's available for people right now.
Yeah, and I tell photographers a lot of times, especially amateurs or advanced amateurs, because there's the block of, okay, I have all this cool gear and I want to go shoot something, but it's hard to get motivated to shoot something when you don't know what you're going to do with what you shoot. So I tell people on the show a lot to go, for motivation and ideas, to go just plow through the Shutterstock library, get some ideas of different things that are going on. And then based on this conversation, they go out and execute on something, shoot a bunch of cool things. Now they have in the back of their head, I know I'm shooting and this is going to go on Shutterstock, or this is going somewhere, not just into my Lightroom library or Aperture library. It's actually going to, not that I'm going to go buy the latest Ferrari with the revenue from it, but at least it's not going to just sit on my hard drive. It's going to go someplace, and I will get some feedback on it and possibly some additional revenue off of it. So it sort of all makes a full circle. So congratulations on that, guy.
Thank you.
Well, thanks a lot for coming on today. It's been a busy week. We're in the second week of January 2014.
Is that right?
We're full on into 2014, so thanks a lot for coming on, and best of luck with Shutterstock, Offset, and Skillfeed, and all your future endeavors. Sounds like you guys you got the Midas touch over there, so congratulations.
Thanks, Frederick.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Great talking with you.
Okay, talk to you soon.
Talk to you
Bye.
soon. Bye.